There was a time when talk of German rearmament would have caused shockwaves across Europe.
Die Kameraden haben jetzt hier heute ihren ersten Schießtag und befinden sich demnach in der Grundlagenausbildung, im Nahbereichsschießen sowie dann in den ersten Lagen der Gefechtsausbildung.
But now at Lenin, an old East German training area, they're preparing new soldiers for the mountain troops, part of an army that's about to be revitalized. With war stalking the continent, the Bundeswehr has a big funding increase in its sights. A boost of 100 billion euros, part of a new foreign policy set out by the government in response to the invasion of Ukraine. The government here is talking about a complete transformation of Germany's defence and foreign policy. It's a bold announcement, but it'll take time to come to fruition. Many in Europe would say the changes announced by Chancellor Scholz are long overdue. General Erich Wad was military advisor to Angela Merkel as Germany failed to meet increased defence spending pledges set by NATO after Vladimir Putin seized Crimea in 2014.
We gave more money in the defense budget in 2014, but we did not change our policy towards Russia. Angela Merkel tried to include the Russians again in the European system, and she tried to talk. But I think in the end we missed 7 years, and we should have started to change completely our policy 7 years ago and not today.
In Berlin, where the mass graves of Soviet soldiers who fell in 1945 remind everyone of the cataclysm of the Second World War, the German preference for diplomacy and commerce rather than deterrence and confrontation seemed logical for decades.
The Soviet Union lost 27 million people, and Germans are very conscious of the fact that the very worst damage was done in the Soviet Union and in the East. So, you know, the desire to reconcile with the Soviet Union was one of the very strongest desires in German foreign policy.
And as if to remind Germany's politicians, the Reichstag still bears the graffiti left by the Soviet soldiers who took it. And well before Parliament shifted here, the Social Democrat Willy Brandt pioneered a rapprochement with the Kremlin, and a later leader, Gerhard Schröder, stressed economic interdependence was a good thing, leading to a heavy reliance on Russian gas and oil, something today's politicians now seek to end.
I don't think that we will have a complete boycott of getting oil for the next few months or even years, because we are very much dependent. I think there are still some deliberations on how can we manage not to pay too much into the war chest of Putin by buying his oil and gas, of course, and at the same time developing strategies not to damage our own economy and our own citizens too much.
So now the energy investments have to be unpicked and the coercive side of German policy, the military, beefed up. But the Bundeswehr has suffered from decades of underfunding. Its readiness and ability to sustain a fight are low. Fixing those issues could soon blast through that promised 100 billion.
The Bundeswehr is in a very bad situation. I mean, we had less tanks than Switzerland and less ships than our small neighbor, the Netherlands. The Air Force is a little bit better, but our Navy, for instance, we have the smallest Navy of our history. There is, and from that point of view, this 100 billion is not a very high amount of money, but we need that to strengthen our military capabilities.
But for those serving and training now, there is at least a promise that their troops will be made ready for conflict.
Selbstverständlich ist es wichtig, deswegen habe ich mich auch dazu entschieden. Und unseren Auftrag nehmen wir bestmöglich wahr, um im Rahmen aller Umstände hier das beste Produkt, den bestens ausgebildeten Soldaten herzustellen.
The targets of growing military potential and a more hard-headed approach to Russia have now been fixed then. But if Vladimir Putin passed from the scene in the coming months, would Germany's newfound vigour falter and more traditional attitudes to defence spending and indeed Russia reassert?